All right, fam, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. George Floyd gets killed May 25th, 2020. The result of that was all of a sudden, you had all of these companies who were talking about, the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion. Some $50–60 billion in commitments was made by companies to give to social organizations. We begin to hear phrases like social impact, and social change, black economic, social justice, and on and on and on. And who really benefited? A lot of people got jobs as DEI jobs. 3 years later, that $50–60 billion, nearly all of it not spent. A lot of those DEI people getting laid off right now. Now, I told y'all those DEI jobs were bullshit. I told y'all that. So to my next guest, Randy Bryant. She, of course, DEI expert. She calls herself a DEI disruptor. You've been pissing your DEI people off on social media, on your Instagram page, talking about this stuff.
Yes.
And again, we're now seeing it borne out in the folk losing their jobs.
Right.
Getting laid off.
Right. Because before it was a PR effort. Companies knew they had to do something, particularly after the murder of George Floyd, and they made announcements. They made announcements like, we are hiring a DEI professional. And it was a joke, to be quite frank with you. They hired some people that were, as long as they were part of a underrepresented group but had no DEI experience, they gave them the jobs. And don't get me wrong, this is not the professionals' fault. The people who do this care, and so I hope I'm not upsetting my people, because they're my people. To do this work is hard work. But they definitely, it was a PR move, and they were used, They provided these DEI experts with absolutely no power, absolutely no voice, no budgets, no staff, no nothing. So it was just a marketing effort. And so when we talk about the number of jobs that are being lost, along with that number, we also must consider the number of people who have been burnt out in 2 years and have left their jobs. Because people who get into DEI care. It's personal for them. They have been that person who has been mistreated and no longer want to be mistreated. They have been that person who was unable to move up in a company that they were overqualified to do. So they leave because they got into it, because they cared, but they were not given the resources to really make any change.
And the thing I kept saying to people over and over and over again, I use this phrase all the time, P&L responsibility.
Right.
Meaning that in any company, if you ain't got P&L responsibility, you don't have profit and loss responsibility, you are not a valued person. And I've spoken many conferences, given speeches, and I said the same thing about these jobs, and some people in the audience got mad. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I said, they ain't real jobs. Because the DEI job today is the equivalent of the global diversity officer job in the past 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. And before that, in the 70s and 80s, it was the vice president for community affairs.
Yes.
In many places, that was the Negro executive job.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me say this. First of all, we do talk about how it is the Negro executive job. But one thing I don't think people realize is that the vast majority of DEI positions go to white people. 75, 76% of all DEI positions, the top.
Right, but see, that's what changed. Because what happened was, see, again, the VP Community Affairs job with Negroes. Then all of a sudden, and then when it became about diversity, then it was like, oh, so we're going to include Black and Latino and Asian, Native American, gay, women. And so all of a sudden, you start seeing all these folks who are chief diversity officers or heads of DEI don't look like us. And then you start saying, well, what the hell is this diversity, equity, inclusion? I remember when I spoke at Coca-Cola, I gave a keynote address. This was several years ago. And they asked me, and they said, They said, how would you, if you were talking about diversity, how do you see it? I said, black first. I said, then everybody else. And they kind of looked at me. I said, let me be real clear. These programs were created coming out of the civil rights movement.
Oh, yes.
I said, so it was black first. And I said, so I'm going to say black, Latino, Native American, Asian. I said, that's it. I ain't including nobody else. I said, because if you gay, if you white and gay, you still white.
Right.
And I had to explain this to people. I said, because this was part of my problem when it came to a lot of these jobs, because they just started trying to throw, it then became, the diversity of thought, the diversity of ideology. Yes. I'm like, yo, no, I ain't trying to hear that bullshit.
But they like that because it makes them more comfortable. I mean, the problem with DEI is that it has become, or it probably started that way, if we're honest, white-centered, right? And so, first of all, mainly white people were hired to do the job. Of course, white women. The same people who have benefited the most from all civil rights movement. Because if people are feeling uncomfortable with differentness, they are going to bring people in who are most like them. So a white executive, and still most executives, most management, most directors and vice presidents are white, hetero, cis males. They feel most comfortable with white women. So they can bring in white women and say, oh, look at our diversity. Look how great we are. But those same white women are the closest to white men. They are not suffering the same way that, for instance, black people are. So they don't advocate the same way. And those same women who would get angry at me saying that are the same women who would say, it's not fair that we have all men making decisions with Roe versus Wade. DEI at this point, the reason why I call myself a disruptor, to be honest, after being in this field through all the name changes you talk about for such a long time, I'm really just quite disgusted at what it has turned into. It's a joke. Not very many people take DEI seriously whatsoever because we have been ineffective. Not because we don't care, but because we have not been armed with the resources to do anything. Because the companies don't care. Companies care about diversity, equity, and inclusion as far as it affects their reputations. As far as...
Not bottom line, reputation.
Reputations, period. They do not see it as a business...
Imperative.
Imperative, absolutely not. And I tell people, and this is quite different, I don't believe DEI belongs in human resources. I say DEI in human resources is like a person who is not kind but goes to church every Sunday. It doesn't fix everything, right? I mean, yes, you go to church every Sunday. If you are a person who is committed to having a diverse, equitable, and inclusive company, that means you are looking at your product. For instance, these tech companies are the main ones who are letting people go. Is my product accessible to people with disabilities? Are there people at all price points who can access this product? It means supplier diversity. Are we buying our products from all sorts of people? Are we, does everyone feel as if they have room to be promoted and be successful? But so it is not just do our facilities accommodate all people if someone has some sort of disability? Or do we have all gender bathrooms? It is something, if you care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is something that must be done throughout the entire organization. And it cannot be this add-on at the end of everything else to make things right. Just like that going to church on Sundays is not going to make everything right if you've acted a fool the whole week before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a break. We're going to bring our panel in. I also want to talk about University of North Carolina, Texas A&M University System today. Now, all of a sudden, they're removing DEI language out of these job applications. I want to talk to you about that as well. Now, Republican legislatures, they're changing. Now they want to remove any DEI language from job applications.
Right. They see DEI as a social justice piece. They see it as a nice to have. They see it as honestly kowtowing to the demands of Black and brown and gay people in the LGBTQIA community. I don't even think that they can relate what it feels like to be in a place, because we spend a lot of time at work now, right? To be in a place where you feel unwelcomed. They don't seem to care what it feels like to sense that you have no way of advancement. Why should you work hard if you don't feel as if you can excel, if you could be promoted? Because you don't see anyone who looks like you at those same ranks. They don't seem to think it's important to not be able to sit at your desk because it's not designed correctly for a person who may have a disability. They don't care about the stereotypes. They don't care about the microaggressions that people face every day. It's not important to them because they haven't had to face it. If they were intelligent, though, they would recognize that those issues affect their bottom line, the way that people are losing employees, because ultimately people want to feel safe and a sense of belonging. They say it's the #1 need at work. They want to feel a sense of belonging where they go to work. Is that they always try to say, we want to hire the best person for the job. We don't need DEI. DEI, just like most things, were put in place to counteract people's bigotry. If you really believe that they're hiring the best person for the job, that means you are assuming that white, cis-het males are superior to everyone else, because the majority of power positions are held by that group of people. So what they're saying, what they actually have convinced themselves, is that we have these jobs because we rightfully deserve them, because we are superior than any other candidate that exists. Because those are the people who get these jobs over and over again. And so we put these DEI programs in place to say, no, you should look at and consider other people, to force people to stop being so bigoted, to force people to make decisions outside of themselves because they can only see themselves. But they don't like that. They don't like that whatsoever, as we see. So yes, they are getting rid of all DEI language and putting themselves in positions that they don't even have to pretend anymore that they're considering other folks for jobs.
Michael?
It's not going anywhere anytime soon. The reason why I call myself a disruptor is that I refuse to represent DEI as it stands today. They are going to pay the price. Indeed came out with a survey just recently that said 49% of all Black employees are thinking about leaving their jobs because they're unhappy. 49%. So they need us, right? We know the world needs us. So if they don't get it together, we are starting businesses on our own and saying, you know what, you don't accept me, I'll find another way. We are the kings and queens of finding another way, right? So it's gonna hurt them in the long run. I believe that we need to push people to be held accountable. Where is the money, like you asked yesterday, Roland? How much money are you putting in? How many employees do you have of these certain identity groups? Who sits on your board? And to keep out, because I'm starting to do my own DEI report cards, cursory looking at companies and saying, I don't care about what your mission statement says. I'm looking at your board, I'm looking at your employees, and you get an F. And also, as individuals, go out there and do those Glassdoor reviews. Let people know how you are feeling as a Black person within your companies. Because, like I said, bottom line is that they care about reputation, so don't allow them to get away with just these broad announcements. Individually, we can make a difference.
Yeah. When you put them on blast on social, trust me, they respond.
Yes, some people need to heal. Quite frankly, I think we need healing within our community, because the way that some people are defining masculinity is quite frightening. So healing needs to be done. Same thing happened with the cover with A$AP Rocky and Rihanna, and because she was walking in front, people wanted to call him a simp. and call out the magazine. And I believe that we need to let some of this go and focus on healing, because it scares me that people would think that there's something wrong with two men showing genuine love and affection for one another. It's sad.
And it shouldn't have to be when somebody dies.
No, it should not be.
I mean.